When we think of good digital storytelling, we often associate that idea with beautiful visuals and well-crafted mediums for the viewer to engage with. And yes, while those things can help immerse the viewer in whatever media is being presented to them, those things aren't quite as necessary as our modern lenses might expect. When we think of CGI in film, that's computer-generated imaging, our minds often default to more modern movies that have crazy high budgets, large teams, and stunning visual spectacles. But it wasn't that long ago that CGI animation was in its infancy, and the combination of that novel visual art style with live-action performances often resulted in rather silly visuals that clash with one another. And this isn't to say that all early live-action CGI hybrids looked bad. There's plenty of examples from the turn of the century that hold up great even by today's standards. In my opinion, even outcompeting newer productions. But I'm not here to talk about that. Instead, let's shift our focuses back to films with more obvious visual effects. Enter Robert Rodriguez's The Adventures of Sharkboy and Lavagirl. This is a movie that I hold very near and dear to my heart. I can't even guess how many times I watched this growing up with my cousins. And yes, critical reception was pretty harsh back in 2005. Critics don't even know what good storytelling is. Sidebar, I genuinely believe a qualifying requirement to become a professional film critic is to be functionally illiterate. It is beyond frustrating. I mean, look at this guy. Look at this guy right here. Yeah, dude, no shit, the story isn't perfect. It was written by a child! It was written by a kid! Robert Rodriguez's son wrote the plot to this movie, and it is stated in the very opening credits of the movie before it even starts. Of course it's not going to be logical. Ugh! Ugh! Grow some neurons before opening your mouth about anything, ever again. I'm sorry, I digress. In my opinion, this movie is a cinematic masterpiece, and very well could be Robert Rodriguez's magnum opus. Yes, I know he directed Sin City. I am saying that Sharkboy and Lavagirl rivals Sin City. I think all the lip critics were giving this movie's visual effects were from a place of gross misunderstanding of the source material. For my eyes, the CGI wasn't meant to resemble real life. It was meant to resemble a dream. When you look at the movie from this lens, it changes the presentation dramatically. And I feel like that's the lens this movie was meant to be viewed in, aside from 3D glasses. In the opening scene where we get Sharkboy's backstory, we see some CGI animated sharks that look a lot like real-life great white sharks. But later in the movie, when Sharkboy fights Mr. Electric while Max and Lavagirl flee, the sharks that attack the antagonist look like they're made of glass. Like, they look crystal-like. And when I saw this recently, I first thought, why didn't they just reuse the assets or something from the sharks from earlier? And then it hit me, that was likely intentional. Majority of the movie takes place on planet Drool, a fictitious planet that Max, the protagonist, had dreamt up. And as the movie progresses and we see these different fantastic regions, we grow more and more used to these visuals. I'll say the most jarring visual effects for me were at the very end when Max returns to Earth to fight Mr. Electric one last time, and two very small isolated tornadoes begin to suck up Max's parents when they go looking for him. It just looked really strange, and they needed a way to shoehorn Lavagirl and Sharkboy back into the real world with Max to help them fight Mr. Electric, but aside from that, it was just bizarre looking. The rest of the movie was fantastic though. Visually, everything didn't make sense, but that's what made it make sense in terms of the plot. I thought it was very well crafted. And it's very easy to chalk up this movie's presentation as simply a product of its time. Yes, that surely played a role, but I think for the purposes of the story, this art style only helps entrench the viewer into the world of Drool. Having technological limits in your presentation enhance the storytelling, and immersion isn't something that's just limited to film. As I was admiring how this unique style changes the presentation of the dream world of Sharkboy and Lavagirl, I realize that this kind of supplementing can be found elsewhere, like in video games. If you haven't played any of the Assassin's Creed games, the first 4 installments heavily lean into the fact that the player is controlling an in-game protagonist who is controlling the assassin through simulations. In the first 3 games, this protagonist is Desmond Miles, but in the 4th installment, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, we presume the life of an unnamed employee of Abstergo, the in-game developers of the assassin simulation, which allows you, the real player, to relive the memories of pirate assassin Edward Kenway. This is the installment we're going to be focusing on for this video because I have sunk many hours into this game, far more than any of the other ones, so heads up. With that said, it's a pretty fun game that, I think, did a great job culminating the mechanics and world building of its 3 predecessors into a fairly novel experience. The game even had amazing reviews back then, and today is still revered as one of the best titles in the series. And Ubisoft put a lot of effort immersing the player into the simulation, not necessarily the world of the story itself. There's many parameters and restrictions to your actions as a player. For example, if you start attacking civilians or domestic animals, the simulation will be desynchronized, whereas in other games you would get a mission failure or something to that effect. The game will literally go, no, Edward Kenway wouldn't have done that, knock it off, and if you don't, you fail the mission or you have to restart from a different point. The same thing even happens if you get Edward killed or his ship, the Jackdaw, sunk somewhere at sea. Desynchronized. Not dead, not game over, not mission failed. Desynchronized, because you're not doing the simulation correctly. The game is very self-aware in this sense, and I think that is another great element into immersing the player. And I can praise it till the cows come home, but it being a 2013 Ubisoft game, it of course had its flaws. At launch, this game had bugs. Like, a lot of bugs. And yeah, I'm including some missing audio when it should have been there, but I'm also talking bigger things like... Yeah, I don't think this is something Edward would have encountered back in the 1700s. I remember when this game was still newer and seeing these videos on YouTube of players sharing their encounters with these funny bugs on their playthroughs. And as a younger player, I had my share of these encounters as well. But it was never too out of the ordinary in the sense that I was reminded I was playing a game. In my head, I was adoring how immersive it was already, so when I saw these things, I rationalized it. I began thinking, oh, this is just Abstergo's poor programming. I didn't even consider that it was Ubisoft's poor programming instead. I had rationalized what I was seeing with the context of the story, and I just went on with my playthrough. It was that immersive. A story's presentation doesn't need to be perfect to immerse whoever is interacting with it. And as these 2 examples have demonstrated, those imperfections can draw the interactor even further into the story. It's an interesting symbiosis between the mechanics of the medium and the actual context of the story being told, and I wish more storytellers were able to take advantage of things like this. But I do suppose the scarcity of it is what makes these ones all the more special. So, with all that being said, my name is Cruz Garcia. Thank you for listening.